Right, sorry for a few minutes late. Apologies for the meeting.
We have no apologies.
No apologies. Fran Victory. Okay. Any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests or other disclosable interests? No. Confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of 18th of March. Anybody, any comments?
I don't have an interest to declare, but when we get to sustainable, so shared prosperity funding and the Rural England Prosperity Fund, I chair a business that received a grant. So just wanted to note it.
No. Okay, thank you. So the minutes, are we happy to accept those? Yep. Chair's announcements, I don't have any. We're going to any public participation? None. Public Spaces Protection Order, Dog Control, Malvern Hills District Council. So who's taking that? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to be the first up this evening to present the report on the Public Space Protection Order. And I'm joined by Rob Rich, who sat behind me, our Community and Enforcement Safety Manager, and of course, Jen Taylor, Director, who may want to answer any questions that come up. But just to give it a very short overview summary, we first implemented the Public Space Protection Order, or PSPO, as I'll call it for short, as we go through in 2022. And periodically it requires a review and a consultation in order to determine whether it should be continued. The public consultation, of which you'll see details of in the report, has been instrumental in determining whether we continue, but it's also been very important in shaping what that looks like moving forward. Just to put on record, very grateful for those people that participated. I do consider it that we had a good response to that consultation. So the report seeks exec support for the recommendations relating to dog control in Malvern Hills as set out in section 2, which proposes we extend and expand the PSPO for further 3 years to enable us to take enforcement action on dog fouling offences and place further restrictions around some of the dog-related issues that matter most to our residents. And the report sets out more detail on what those are, but it's very clear that it is a subject that residents feel is important. It's an issue that does impact on our communities, and it's an area they would like to see more as a council for us doing more. So whilst you'll see that the PSPO is one tool in the toolbox, so to speak, there are a number of other actions the consultation has concluded that we will take forward in an action plan to ensure we are effective as we can be, areas such as education, promotion and campaigns. I know some members have asked me and officers, what has the last 3 years meant for us practically as a PSPO? So just to give you a very quick overview, since it came into effect, we've issued 4 fixed penalty notices and 8 community protection warnings and notices in situations involving dog fouling and unsupervised dogs. It does give us a way as CPN to push for greater behaviour change with the option of prosecution if things don't improve. So we do see it as a very effective tool to have. And residents have obviously supported that in the consultation. So, Chair, in summary, I hope the report is clear in our ambition and ask the support of the extension to the PSPO for a further 3 years.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, no arguments on the extension from my viewpoint. I'm just curious how many officers we actually have out and about at any one time acting on this.
We've got 2 community and environmental protection officers, so they cover the whole suite of environmental enforcement issues. One of the things that came out clearly in the consultation was around visibility of enforcement, but I think earlier in the year we acknowledged that that needed to improve because, that when we have the changes in the seasons, we see, so during the winter months we see more on the footpaths, highways. During the summer, the issue moves to open spaces. So what we've done is we've took a stronger approach with the team. So there have been 50 bespoke PSPO patrols since January this year. So we're looking at around 2 a week. So for context, that's alongside everything else, the other reports that they receive, abandoned vehicles, fly tipping. To further support that is we've worked with ICT. So now when reports come in, we map where the fouling is being reported, but we're also mapping where the patrols are taking place. So we can do that overlay. So are we in the right places? Sometimes I'd suggest that we could possibly have been guilty of going where there's the most noise on social media, but not the most noise in terms of where the reports are coming from. So, you know, the plea is really, as from members and members of the public, is use our report it system. That helps us decide where the officers go, not just on the days, but the times. We make that, you know, we don't want to be guilty of making that assumption that people walk their dogs between 6 and 8 and 4 and 6. If you're seeing it, then your information is really, really valuable to us.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks, Jenny, for the report. I certainly support this renewal. I certainly think in my ward, dog fouling has to be in the top 5 issues that get reported. And certainly thank Rob and his team, who are always very responsive. I suppose my question was similar to the last one. I noticed in the survey 72% suggested that enforcement action was not very effective. Are there any kind of additional measures you think can be taken for enforcement? And I notice in the report, I think certainly with residents that I deal with, a big issue, yes, is public parks and green spaces, but particular housing areas or housing estates tend to be really blighted by this issue. Is there anything that can be done with those social housing providers for them to take a little bit more responsibility in Malvern Hills, working with them going forward?
I'm happy to respond in respect to social housing providers and I guess hotspot areas. Slightly declaring interest as I work for a social housing provider. I think, you know, Rob's earlier point is about our intelligence and understanding. And I know that we do work closely with our HAs, and I would hope that members of the public reporting stuff, but we often know that that doesn't happen. So I think, you know, the report quite clearly sets out we need to do more promotion. We need to promote more around the green dog walker scheme, some of the other initiatives that we have to try and encourage take up. And certainly, you know, I'm sure, and Rob might want to follow me, is there's opportunity for us to do estate walkabouts and conversations about particular hotspot areas as well. So I'm sure Rob's noted it down if he's not already doing it. And that's something we can take away, because I think it's a very good point. I mean, public footpaths, urban and rural, it's, you know, there's nowhere that's immune from this issue. And without wanting to prolong another conversation about dog fouling, we do know that it is our top 5 and it is really important to our residents. And I think the consultation results speak loudly to that. So, you know, it is a priority area for us, and that we will continue to look to other ways, best practice ways that we can address the problem. But the PSPO does play an important role in both prevention, detection and enforcement of the problem.
I think, sorry, Chair. I think it's a really important. Enforcement's really difficult. You know, when the guys turn up in high vis and are very visible. You know, on one side of the consultation, people are asking us to be more visible, and then the one thing people don't do when they've got a dog with them, when we are visible, is do the wrong thing. So our presence sort of encourages the right thing, which leads to the point that we need to be more visible in terms of where we are and people seeing us. But I think the point that I could add is we are a little bit reliant on the public's intel and the public wanting to see the changes as well. So, you know, any sort of dash cam footage or greater intelligence on the type of dog, the vehicles that people get into, it just adds to the picture that when we're going to any of these places, we know a little bit what we're looking for. I think the key thing in the PSPO is the ability for officers to ask members of the public in control of a dog, have you got the means to clear after your dog? And that is a fantastic tool for us. In terms of social landlords and on the estates, we're fully tapped into the estate walkabouts. So we always try to send a environmental protection officer and a community safety officer to all of those. We're doing a walkabout litter pick on Thursday evening on the Algar estate. We also do the Royals. We've done Tenbury, we've done Upton. I think on those types of things, we rely on the social landlords to let us know when those things are happening, and then we're more than happy to be involved.
Yep, thanks. Yep, just echoing others' points. I don't think there's anything controversial here. You carried out a consultation, considered the feedback, and concluded that the PSPO should be extended, which is the right decision in my view. And the response rate was really high for a 1 month period, I thought. It was a really good piece of consultation work. And overwhelmingly, dog owners, people felt that dog owners should be made to clear up after themselves. And the other suggestions are sensible, so I'm happy to support it. Just picking up on the point you made, though, Rob, about responsibility and eyes from the public. It's hard enough to enforce the dog poo stuff, and that's all we've talked about so far. But then we've got things like dogs being on leave if requested to be, and not being in children's playgrounds and stuff. Is that whose responsibility is it to kind of pick up on that? Is that again coming back to members of the public, or will it be something that the enforcement officers keep an eye out for? How will it work, really, I suppose? Because it's hard enough to enforce what we have to enforce at the moment without, that as well.
It is the same officers, and it again goes back to that intelligence to make sure that we're in the right places at the right time. So, we've got park areas, Upton, I've got the fenced children's play area. So that is, when we've had issues in the past where people's dogs have been in there, and it's contained. So people on occasions in the past, it's been used as an exercise area where the dog puppy training could take place. So it is on those officers. It's the dogs on lead is again authorised officers, so that can be extended to our civil enforcement officers. So it's a difficult balance. I accept that, but I think based on my interpretation of is that visibility matched with intelligence of where we should be, and if we're allocating the appropriate amount of time to it and we know where to go, then I'd like to think that we can strike a better balance and the public see us more visibly than they have up to this point based on that consultation.
I think David was next.
Thank you. Very interesting, fully supported, likewise with everybody else, I believe. I'd like you to go to 2526, page 2526. Particularly the end of 25 is where there's problematic areas, which actually includes one in my patch. And page 26, the first main sentence in there says, these locations were mentioned repeatedly as needing clearer rules, signage and enforcement. I know that Rob's doing the enforcement because I've seen him there and what have you. But I don't understand really what is required regarding clearer rules. Have you got a template or anything for rules and signage besides your little stickers that you stick up?
Yeah, so signage is, we've got the quote ready for the new signage that sets out. There are no changes to what we're asking of owners, so the new signage is ready to be printed. The rules are as stated in the report. I'm not sure how we could make them more clearer. I think that the key is making sure they're in the right places, and that's, in the past, David, we worked with you in terms of the Any Bin Will Do, making sure that we get those, we understood where the bins were. So again, we can work with town and parish councils on where would you like to see the signs, so we can audit that as well, so we don't have an influx of signs. They're in the right places, and it could be overkill and people miss it. So it's important that they're in the right place.
Thank you. We have 3 entrances to Plover's Rise, which you probably know about anyway. And they always try and sneak in through the entrance where there's nobody with a van or car.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Anne Beverley.
Thanks so much. Yes, I was interested in the questioning so far, and in particular, the fact we've got 2 CSOs who are covering a big patch and with obviously quite a range of challenges. But the definition of an authorised person, I just wondered, you know, it seems a bit broad, that definition in the paper, and I just wondered, is there an opportunity to use authorised people or persons more to support the CSOs to, you know, give a wider frame of reference in terms of the enforcement? Thank you.
I don't want to tread on anybody's toes, but I think that goes down to the delegations. So, you know, the Director of Housing and Communities and the Director of Legal and Governance have got the ability to delegate that to officers of the council. I don't believe that we've got the ability, or the scheme of delegation allows us to issue it to people that aren't officers. So it is the people, you know, it's me, my team, and, you know, people that have got appropriate training. I think we also have to acknowledge that enforcement skills, you know, they're a difficult thing to manage, and how people respond is very challenging. So we need to ensure that we've got the right people managing those difficult situations.
Yes, following on from your comments regarding people reporting it, do we have a leaflet or anything that we can put up on boards in places like the Octagon Centre and then hand out when we have sessions there that can encourage people to report? If there is such a thing, I would be interested in having it.
Absolutely, we'll get that shared in Vic's Roundup for members.
So all those in favour, if you raise your cards now, please. Yeah, that's unanimous.
Thank you, Misha. The next item is the tourism strategy. We're asked to review and approve the new tourism strategy. Who's going to take us through that?
I'll start. Thank you very much, Chair. Happy to start. I think the first thing to say, the purpose is obviously to introduce the new tourism strategy for Malvern Hills District Council for the period of 25 to 30. And the recommendations are set out in 2.1.1 and 2, that we approve the strategy and that delegate some authority in respect to minor adjustments, any minor adjustments that might be required for the final plan. I think we have been through this strategy quite a bit up to date, and I did note in the minutes of today's meeting that Councillor Driscoll, I think, commented about the alignment of it to the National Landscapes strategy and plan, so which I think is very positive in that we are looking here at a regenerative tourism strategy, which I'm very pleased to say our officer responsible for the strategy, Victoria Carman, is here, who can answer any very detailed questions perhaps that anybody might have. But I'd also like to congratulate Victoria on the success of tourism in Malvern Hills. We've seen an increase in 28% since just 2019 in revenues in the district, a 31% increase in employment since 2019, and 127% increase in the value of overnight stays. We've got 40,000 visitors visiting our tourist information centre, so some really impressive metrics, and we're targeting some quite ambitious goals in the strategy as well, which you will see before you. I'd also like to congratulate the tourism team, if I can put it like that, on the rail marketing campaign attracting Yeah, the 14 million viewings, which are just absolutely tremendous success, and in particular the fact that quite a few sites on that promotional campaign were donated free of charge. So it's really impressive, and many congratulations. So just in terms of 2030 targets, we're targeting 250 million pounds in value, 4,500 jobs, up from 3,808 jobs. And one of the big targets in this is the target to hit a 65% score in the Global Destination Sustainability measurements. And we did very well in our first score for a new entrant to this demanding scheme, with a 47% score ahead of Stratford, which only on its first entry got 32%. I hope everybody feels able to approve it. I feel it's been discussed quite a lot, been quite a lot of consultation, and I'm obviously happy to take any questions and hope that somebody will second it. Thank you.
Julie.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Nielsen. As you probably know, tourism is quite a thing of mine. Used to be part of my team when I worked. I think these scores are really good. I'm really pleased with the 28% increase in the economic value, especially considering that since 2019 we've had COVID, so that's a massive increase. Actually, much more, given that we had the dips in between. I'm also really pleased to see regenerative and sustainable tourism balanced quite nicely against the economic growth, because we know that tourism causes problems as well as positive impact. The town centre in Malvern particularly, and I think in Upton, that I've seen absolutely massively busy. I mean, blimey, overly busy some days, I think. And new businesses starting, that's a credit to the overall health of the town centres, because they wouldn't be starting if they didn't feel that they were going to be making money, would they? Just a question really from me. I'm always conscious, and I volunteer at Croom, so I have this same issue at Croom, that we spend a lot of time and effort getting people in. My question then is always, how do we get local people in, and how do we get local businesses to move the people about, so that our own residents are benefiting? I mean, people maybe who are on low incomes, who might not be able to afford to go somewhere or take the kids somewhere. I'd like us to look a little bit more maybe at that. And also just promotion, local promotion. And again, I'll say I work at Croom, volunteer at Croom, so I know this is always an issue. But I know I've had this conversation with Victoria, so it's nothing new, is it, Victoria? But that's just my observations really. But well done, Victoria.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I mean, I'd just like to highlight, though, Victoria, that you have, got a range of metrics in the Appendix 6, which I'm sure you've seen, Councillor Wood, on page 27 and page 28. But and I will come to Victoria, the expert on this. But it's really looking at visitor spend, day trips, overnight, average spend per visitor, day trips, and so forth. So the metrics are really going down to getting our local population. Obviously, we've got shop local campaigns, which I know you know very well, targeting just that, and more, I think, active travel focus, more focus as when we come to later items on today's agenda on making it a more pleasant experience in our town centres, for those to balance out perhaps the focus on the car as the only way to move around our area. So I would say that this integrates very nicely with the town centres consultations, which were held late 21, 22, and the planning that we've been doing since then. But Victoria, you please give us your thoughts too.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that it is about local people as well, and that's particularly picked up in the health and well-being priority, particularly working with the active travel officer. We've and a standalone project improving walking and cycling routes around the town centres. That's not only beneficial for visitors but very beneficial for locals. So the whole thing about tourism is an enabler for local communities, the environment, and using the revenue to improve local communities. and also get them using the tourism assets for their own well-being. And also there's other opportunities for them in volunteering and helping to reduce social inclusion and lots of other benefits tourism can bring. But thank you very much for your comments. Can
Yeah.
also say, sorry, I can also add that the Visit the Malverns map is, and everything we do is about dispersing footfall around the district, and it's not just visitor footfall, it is local people and accessing those local people through our marketing campaigns. Social media, I will point, when I do our Facebook sponsored advertising, a lot of those campaigns will be Malvern as the focus, so everyone in the Malvern area, and then for 40 miles, 60-mile radius will be seeing those adverts. So yeah, it's not just about getting people in from outside the area, it's getting local people around.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. Mark, can you?
Yeah, just echoing a little bit, what I really like, and I think what's unique about this is the regenerative approach. I don't often see that in tourism strategies. You often hear about sustainable tourism strategies, but I like the ethos about tourism that actually improves the quality of life for local people, the local environment, the local economy. So I think that's all great. I suppose I like, it's good to see a good list of events that we're continuing to support here. I suppose my point just goes to the kind of local bit. Obviously, a lot of events are naturally kind of held around the centre of Malvern, as long as we're conscious of the kind of various town centre plans and actually the opportunities for tourism in our other town centres, whether that's the Link or Barnard's Green or other towns, in terms of events, would be, yeah, just think useful to think a little bit about.
Sorry, I will pass to you, Victoria. I just wanted to say I'm very aware of how focused Victoria is on all of our centres. So I know you'll have quite a bit to say, Victoria.
I was just wanted to say, so example would be Oak Apple Day, which we just introduced this May for Upton upon Severn, and we will be building on that year on year. Got a new summer festival in Tembury supporting the Regal with a new outdoor event. We've got new markets, we've got lots of other events happening in Tembury and Upton that we're trying to support. And also, yeah, lots of events are Malvern centric, but it is a cultural centre for the area. But just to also add regarding community support, we do support events with Coach House Theatre, where they provide food bank vouchers for the events that we support. So so people who can't afford to go have the opportunity to attend some of these events as well. And we also ensure that our events that we support, they are free entry events, and they are town centre focused, so that not only helps improve footfall to the town centres, but it also gives local people somewhere to go, a free event, and allows for social inclusion.
Okay, David.
Yeah, just to point out that the Croom Worcestershire has the on-demand bus where you can book a seat. It's cheaper than the old Midland Red or whatever they like to call it now. I'm not certain what they call it. It changes its name all the time. But the on-demand bus, if you book a ticket to go to Croom Court, it's free entry, so you don't have to pay.
Sorry, am I allowed to speak? That was actually going to be included in the sustainable travel campaign, but I was told by the County Council due to PERDA I was not allowed to include the on-demand bus service in our promotions. So I was very upset about that, and so was Croom, because they had their Good Journey campaign on at the same time, which would have promoted the on-demand bus service, but we weren't allowed to do so because of PERDA. Thank you.
And it's only for this year, I believe. So get your trip in.
Thanks. Yeah, just picking up on that point, if you're a veteran, you can travel on the bus for free as well at the moment. So free bus travel, free entry. So, That's a pretty good deal. But I just wanted to thank officers for the reports. I found the SWOT analysis really, really helpful document, actually. And I know Mark and Jules have already said that the regen tourism and sustainable travel options are vitally important to us. So I'm really relieved to see them as a key feature of the strategy. But I would like to see more secure bike parking, if possible. Not just the hoops, more like the lockers that we see down at the station, because some people arrive on quite expensive bikes, and I think to be able to have more secure places to store them would be really, really helpful. Obviously, Malvern Hills is a really popular destination for a wide range of reasons, but, you know, food and the arts being particularly strong. I just got a few questions. First of all, did this go through the Econ Dev PDP? And if so, what were the thoughts of the panel? Secondly, I've attended most of the Malvern-based events recently since I moved here, either as a volunteer or just a visitor. And I didn't see mention of Lineup, which would be entering its third year this year. So I'm a bit concerned that that's at risk. So I would like to seek some assurance that it isn't. And again, I'd just like to see more mention of the arts in Appendix 4, because there is a general acceptance that the arts play a vital role in community wellbeing and wellness and individual wellness, as well as obviously being a big draw to the town. So I wonder if someone could just pick up on those points, please.
I'm pretty sure it went through Econ Dev PDP. Yeah, and we happen to have our chairman here a couple of times. So Cynthia, Councillor Palmer, did you want to say a few words as chair?
Well, yes, it did go through economic PDP and it was passed by everybody. So we were very pleased to pass it to the next stage that Victoria was working on. Thank you.
And I'll pick up on the Lineup Festival. It's been delayed until, well, it's not delayed, it's now happening in October, so you might not have seen as much promotion around it. Lee Farley's still working on that, but yeah, it's going to be picked up later on in the year. But I completely I get where you're coming from with the arts. The arts is a huge priority for the area, particularly for tourism and locals, and I'm sorry if it has been omitted from the SWOT. It just needs to be added in, and any other areas you would like me to. Thank you.
Okay, David wants to come in?
Yeah, I'm looking at the objectives you've got and looking on page 62, the number of visitors to natural assets. You've got no change or a decrease of 10%. One of my questions is that realistic? And why are you forecasting to make it level or drop it when the overall tourism level is going to go up?
We would like those tourists to be in the town centre, spending their money in the businesses and not just on the hills, walking and eroding our landscape. So we're trying to mitigate the environmental impacts by encouraging more visitors to explore our heritage and cultural assets and our town centres and lots of other businesses.
Okay, is that any other comments, questions?
Could I have a seconder, please?
Yes, I'll jump in again. I've got a seconder, Jules.
All right, so everybody in favour, could you raise your card now, please? That's unanimous.
Okay, thank you everyone. Next item is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and Rural England Prosperity Fund.
Indeed, Chair. Again, I think this report is fairly straightforward in that it provides a final report on the delivery of the UK SPF in the years 22 to 25. And I'd very much, of course, like to thank our Econ Dev team for the fantastic work in delivering such an amazing scheme for the area over those 3 years. And obviously, it's tremendous to be able to look ahead to this year too, to be able to continue the delivery of this scheme. But alongside that, the Rural England Prosperity Fund has also been a great success. And I believe the report details that pretty thoroughly. I'd like to propose that we accept the recommendations under item 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. that we note the final report, that we approve £100,000 budget for the Malvern Hills Rural Fund, which has been such a particular success, and that we delegate authority to the Director of Economy and Environment with myself as portfolio for any issues arising within this report. I just wanted to highlight some of the areas of success and also to note Elspeth McQueen's involvement in actually making this run so smoothly, as quite a complex area with many applications for this funding. But between 22 to 25 we've distributed £2.5 million of shared prosperity funding, and over the year 24 to 25 1.6 million, and that has secured investment of £465,000. And in the rural England prosperity funding side, between 22 to 25 £500,000 has been distributed, and over the 24-25 period 375,000, with investment secured totaling 562,000. For next, or this current year, 25-26, we've got £830,000 secured, and that's been allocated to projects as agreed at exec in March of this year. And the Rural Fund has opened to expressions of interest, and we've already had 32 expressions of interest, as detailed in this paper, amounting to over £500,000, with the 250,000 to allocate. And in terms of who have we actually supported, 186 businesses have been supported through the SPF, 198 employees have completed almost 250 courses, and the REPF funding has supported 36 projects. So I really think it's been a fantastic success. The projects are detailed at the end of the paper, and I'm happy to take questions along with our Director of Economy and Environment and colleagues here, and also look for somebody to second the recommendation. Thank you.
Jules.
Yeah, just a quick comment, really. I mean, firstly, this has been a huge programme, and thank you very much to the ED team for doing all of the work, and it's run very well. I know that through the Rural Economy panel, that the subgroup panel that assesses the applications has worked very well. So I think it's a good model. It's a general question, really, with all of these funding bids, which, you know, I've worked with over many years, mainly European funding, but there are loads of outturns that have to be reported. I just wonder, with some of the rural project funding, do we follow up with those business even after the funding stream has closed? Because sometimes there can be a fallout later on, you know, businesses aren't sustainable. I think we used to say they've got to be sustainable for 3 years or something. I can't remember, but I'm sure Ian will probably put me right.
It's a little bit more straightforward than the old ERDF, ESF type programs. So the 3 years doesn't apply, but we do monitor beyond grant payment date to ensure that what the project says it's going to achieve, it does achieve. So yes, beyond the closure of the program, we will still be checking.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm happy to support this if nobody else isn't.
I hope that's not right.
Well, the only thing I was disappointed in is you've gone back to the old-fashioned way of putting postcodes in and not having the districts in. In the last report, we had districts and what have you, because the general public that are looking at these, they don't want to see a postcode, they want to see what area it is. They don't want to go looking up and see where WR13 is and what have you, or WR6. Well, WR6 is fairly easy because it's Martley. But, you know, it's much easier to have the sort of district council ward or something like that. If you could bear that in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, we were asked by members to put postcodes in, but we'll absolutely add the wards as well to the list and republish.
just like to say, actually, the names of the recipients are often a giveaway, but I do take the point. If we can add the ward, that'd be great.
It was just a quick comment rather than a question, just to say that I'm in full support. And Jen and I and Simon from Econ Dev met earlier today with the NFU to discuss support for farmers. And of course, this came up in discussion about the additional funds that we've put forward. And it was just a feedback. They were very complimentary of the support that's on offer for rural businesses. Actually, I do feel that it makes a big difference. They did feedback to us some challenges around application writing and some bits that we can pick up with them in terms of support and skills, but I just wanted to feedback that it has made a big difference to businesses in rural communities, and certainly put Malvern Hills District Council in the good books of some of the farmers.
I'm really pleased to get that feedback, Jenny, and thank you so much for taking the meeting today. I was very sorry not to attend myself, but we had a site visit for planning which conflicted on the time side. So very, very pleased to get that feedback. Thank you.
Nothing.
Yeah, thanks. Ian, first of all, you know what working with councillors is like. You can't do right for doing wrong. Keep trying. No. So paragraph 3.4, it just states that the full impact of the funding is still being assessed. So I'm just wondering when the full impact report will be available. And there's another quick question around underspend, which I think is highlighted as a risk. So I just wondered what happened to any underspend. Does it go into general reserves or earmarked reserves or somewhere else?
I would just like to take the bit about underspend, which I don't think is probably a real risk, as they are so over applied for the funding. And as we've already seen with the rural funding, it's more than double the EOI's amount to more than double the amount of funding available. But 3.4, I'll leave to Ian.
It's probably 12 months on beyond the end of the financial year concerned that we'd be able to round up all the outcomes and the outputs. So I suspect that's the timeline we're looking at.
No other comments, questions? We've got a seconder. David?
All those in favour, please, can you raise your cards now? That's unanimous.
Thank you, Misha. Item 9, the financial outturn 24-25, and that is come to me. So this is covering the financial performance for 24-25 against the approved budget for 24-25 and the carry forward into 25-26. Just today, the statement of accounts has to be approved by the external auditor commencing in the autumn. It has to be submitted by the end of February. And turning to the revenue expenditure, if you look at table 1 in that, you'll see that the net expenditure, the budgeted, the actual, and then the difference between those two is shown in those three columns. The third column is called the underspend column. So in essence, it's the difference between the two of them. So against the approved budget, we have 9.9 million of the approved budget, and the underspend is actually 231,000. And that's achieving within 2.3% of the actual budgeted figure. Now, we took advantage of an opportunity that arose during the year where a building came up, a new possibility of a new depot came up, and we allocated 1.2 million to the purchase of that for the upcoming domestic food waste that we have to deal with. So that 1.2 million then is sort of detracted or taken from the underspend, which had been sitting at 1.4 million, and we've ended up with the figure of 231. So we've had a great performance from our investment income, which gave rise to that that underspend, or the extra income, that money that came in, and we've had really very good financial management. So I'd like to thank the finance team for all their efforts through the year and for ending up with such a good result. So great performance, and well done to everybody. The funding position this is all with a lift. There's a lift in the business rate income, which has actually boosted the general fund. So we've got the 231 and the business rates increase. So we've got a general fund now of 6.6 million. And if we turn to the capital expenditure element of this, we have spent 4.75 million in 24-25, and we have an underspend of 886 against the projected budget. So table 3 itemises these, the slippage elements which give rise to the underspend, which is carried forward to 25-26. And you can see what the ongoing bit of the disabled facilities grant, which each year is actually also a massive underspend. So I think that's being dealt with, or will be dealt with in the coming year as we shift the contract out on that. The capital reserves are at 7.46 million for the future capital commitments going forward. The cash management position at the end of the year, the cash balance is 23.6 million. The investment interest, which we'd sort of referred to earlier, is 1.9 million, and we had budgeted actually, or aimed, we thought, for about 1.2 million, but there's been an excellent performance, as I've just mentioned, on getting the investment return of up to 1.9. So with an average overnight cash balance of 41.8 million pound, we've achieved a rate of return of 4.62%. So that's a well managed in these limited interest rate times. We're floating about in that area, and they've held up for that period. Table 4 shows the breakdown in the CCLA and the Treasury elements, so you can see where the interest earned has come from in those different elements. I would say overall, we are financially very healthy. And just to reiterate, thank you to the team for all the work that they've done. And if we can take any discussion, comments, or plaudits from members on that.
Yes, thank you. A couple of things I wanted to mention. Firstly, huge well done to the policy planning team and all of the support staff. Oh, I'm on the wrong paper. I'm on the wrong paper. I'll come on to the next one. Sorry, beg your pardon. I've jumped ahead. Ignore me.
Yeah, I thought that was a different element, which it was. Natalie.
Yeah, I'll just say it for Jules. Well done, Andy and the team. And John said it anyway, but I think to be in such a positive financial situation when we're in the midst of a local government funding squeeze is really excellent. You know, quick question though, with your crystal ball in view, Andy, what do you suppose the impact on us will be of the recently announced spending review?
Crystal ball at the ready, far too early to tell, to be honest. Spending reviews tell you absolutely nothing at the level of a district council. Absolutely nothing.
Anybody else got a comment or plaudit even? More plaudits, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Just happy to second and would like to add my congratulations to the financial and resources team. Thank you.
Not that I don't like plaudits, but I think it needs to be recognised that it's not the finance team that spend the majority of the money. It's all of the staff. I think the only thing perhaps you could give finance credit for is keeping score very well. And setting a culture that means that budget holders do actually look after their budgets, but it is all of the staff and all of the budget holders that actually do all the hard work, with a bit of whinging from finance along the way.
I'm happy to amend my congratulations.
Such modesty. I think this is for noting rather than voting on. So, I know since Jeremy was ready to go. Anybody, any other comments? We got? Okay, we shall move on. The next annual performance report. So, that's me again. Right, the annual performance report 24-25. If we, on the strategic element, we've got the SWDPR, which was submitted at the end of September. Hearings started 4th of March and have gone on into May. So it's to be adopted at the end of this financial year. Everything running well, we should get there. There's been a revised national policy, NPPF has been revised, came in the beginning of December, and that resulted in a significant increase in housing numbers. The South Worcestershire Council's immediate review of the plan will be taken up on adoption of the SWDPR. So once we get the SWDPR adopted, we go straight into another review carrying on that front. The 5-year housing land supply has been published, and the South Worcestershire Council's 5-year supply can only be delivered for the next, ours can only be delivered for the next 2.06 years. Turning to the unemployment figures, we have 1,160 claimants, which is 2.5% of eligible people aged 16 to 64. And this last year, the number actually last year was 1,090, so there is a little bit of an increase over, I think I made a, let me retract on that. I think the difference is an increase of 2.5% from the figure last year. Expected, this has really been expected as the earnings threshold has increased May, so you're not really comparing like with like. So that there's some explanation on that, and also there's been a universal credit rollout. So there are things that impact these figures, so they're not like for like, and the difference will come through that. On the services side, the overall performance is on track. The highlights there, we've got a very positive performance, exceedingly well done on the planning applications determined within timescales, to be commended for that. National target is comfortably exceeded, and also our own internal stretch targets been met. And thank you to all the development team for actually what's been outstanding work in sort of bringing us to this particular position, given the difficulties we've had over the last couple of years. So we've had a big turnaround in performance in that area. The processing time for housing benefits and council tax support claims have both exceeded the target, and household refuse collection and recycling amounts are really positive. It appears that year on year they keep growing. So there is really quite a demand for that, and quite a good result in terms of what we're actually recycling and what's actually not going into landfill. I suppose it's getting reduced as well. There's basically a low residual waste and a large amount of recycled and composted material coming through that. So one item is on housing benefit claims. That is actually on this red, amber, green assessment or evaluation of the state of it. We've got the housing benefit is just amber, but we've just missed the target on that, and it slipped the red, amber, green into the amber. On homelessness numbers, this is in the red category. And suppose disappointingly, the number has gone up to actually 41 at the end of the year against last year's figure of 30. So no, I think we made at the end of Q3, I think we made the comment that there were issues with cost of living impact, and also there were some problems with the number of properties available from register providers, causing problems and delays in there. And I know the housing team are actually working quite hard with the register providers to see if we can get a resolution or an improvement on that front to bringing more properties into play. The other element, staff sickness element on that, which again is something, I think every one of us has actually been conscious of this over the last number of years. We're quite concerned on the staff sickness front and what the causes behind it. But that staff sickness remains in the red, and it's skewed, I think, as we've commented before, by some of the long-term sickness elements of it. So the numbers are slightly, are significantly enough adjusted to push us into the red. However, overall, we remain below the national average for the public sector, and on those individuals who need help, again, HR is working quite hard, taking initiatives to go out with trying to engage them to get back to work, to try to be flexible in their approach. So I think those efforts will hopefully bring some success so that we can get back down to what our stretch target of 8 days is what we're actually aiming for. And hopefully we can get down to that with some luck and some good tailwind on that. Short-term absence figures are stable, the same as last year. So it's really the skewed figure from long-term absence. Planning application times, validation, this is improved but remains below our local stretch target. So it's red, and so it's sitting in the red as a result of that. The review of the validation services have been completed, and an action plan for achieving the local stretch targets is underway. And we note that in Q4, the validations have reached the highest number they have in the last 2 years. So this is good news going forward. The building control plans checked within time are also improved, but are red against the stretch target. So I think there's some, what I should say is when you look or start to think more about the numbers and how they're actually going from one year to the other, I think the trajectory is a positive trajectory. So I would say that we're heading in the right direction, but we'd like to hit our stretch targets, which is trying to be exceptional rather than compliant with a national figure. Impact of long-term illness, absence and regulation is on the building control plans is really a fallout from Grenfell. And again, this is being addressed as a matter of urgency. I think we had mentioned this in Q3 as well. But note that our stretch target of 10 days is much more onerous than the statutory 5 weeks. So again, it's this stretch target. If you just to put it in that context, we're actually doing all right nationally, but because we want to actually be exceptional in what we're doing and we want to deliver the best for residents, we've got these stretch targets, which are actually quite demanding. And that means that sometimes it's looking, although you say you're in the red, it's only because you're chasing after the stretch targets. Nevertheless, we will carry on doing that because it's the right thing to do. 5-year plan is covered in Appendix 2. That's all on target. And I shall conclude at that if there's any comments or to be coming back on that. So, Peter, you come in first.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of clarifications, if possible. First of all, on the business rates collection rate, notwithstanding the imminent sainthood of the finance team, that number seems to have dropped, and in the fourth quarter, if I'm reading the statistics correctly. Do we have anything to be worried about there, even though the collection rate is still very high going forward? And the second question, I'll give Andy a couple of seconds for that one, is on affordable homes, where I see the asterisk denoting that these are provisional figures, but those figures are way down on previous years, and I really would like a little more detail and background on what we expect the numbers to be, and if they are so far down on previous years, what are we going to do about it? That's it.
I'll pick up business rates. Nothing to be particularly worried about. Actually, I think if I'm reading it right, it's better than last year. It's 96.8, whereas last year was 96.39. I might be reading it wrong, but apologies. If it carries on, there probably is a problem, because obviously that's businesses not wanting to pay, but not wishing to dish the dirt on anybody in particular. But it is quite interesting that since the education sector has changed, and now quite a lot of school budgets are not done through the county council. Actually, 0.75% of our non-payment is schools. Now, if you go back 3 or 4 years ago, that just wouldn't happen, because the county council, for all of their ills, were quite good at paying their bills. So some of it is structural, I think, but if it does carry on, it's probably more of an indication of businesses not obviously managing their cash flow better. I'm not particularly worried at the moment, but yes, as I said, if it does carry on each year, then it's something we need to look at. Obviously, we do try and recover as quickly as we can, but the state of the economy does have a big impact upon that. But we are looking at new ways to try and get money, obviously, out of businesses and to get them to pay more promptly. So not overly worried at the moment, but I think it's one we need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'm happy to take the affordable housing question. So the numbers that you see in here are reflective of a kind of wider picture for the delivery of affordable housing and a general slowdown in that delivery. Locally, I'd say that's probably 3 things. Firstly, a general slowdown of delivery of housing generally, not just affordable housing, and part of that in a couple of sites has been as a result of a developer going into liquidation who had a couple of sites locally, and so that's now getting back on track as RPs then rebuild new contracts with new developers, but that has slowed things down in year. The other 2 are impacts that are being felt nationally. So the first is the financial pressures on registered providers from bringing properties up to standard where damp and mould has been reported, and where they're meeting legislation to bring EPC standards up to a certain level. So what we are hearing from RPs is they are diverting a lot of their capital into existing stock rather than new stock. And then the third thing, again, is national, is that we are coming to the end of the Affordable Homes Grant round from Homes England, which means that RPs are not as willing to take risks on things because they don't know where the next round of grant is coming from. Now, the spending review has kind of put a bit more of a positive light on that. We've now seen that the investment in a future Affordable Homes Grant is more significant than it has been in the past. We would expect to see that giving much more confidence to the sector to start bringing more into the pipeline to deliver in future. But of course, as Andy says, we don't know the detail of that just yet, how much of that will come to local area, etc., etc. That said, we are doing a piece of work at the moment, working with Ian McLeod and his team in planning and with a number of RPs to explore more creative ways that we can support the kind of step up of delivery in affordable housing locally. So rather than just waiting for the money to come, are there other barriers that we can remove to help get that moving again? So bit of national stuff, bit of local stuff, but we're talking about how we get that moving again. I don't know, Jenny, if you want to say anything else on that one.
I think you've captured it. Obviously, I work for a housing provider, so I can concur from the inside. I think as well, it's about recognising the need to get the right type of affordable housing too. And we've had conversations about, rent to buy, shared ownership, and understanding some of the restrictions that we have in the district around DPOs, designated protection orders. I can never remember what all the acronyms stand for. Just off members' reassurance that we absolutely want to support the delivery of affordable homes, but in the right way, in the right places for our communities. Because some of the other challenges exec will remember is about finding sites that are suitable, that work for RPs, particularly in our rural communities, and how they can then manage those homes, and that we create communities where people can thrive rather than kind of just creating them a home and leaving them to it. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. So although sometimes we get stuck on the metrics and the numbers and we think we need to keep doing more, there is an element of quality over quantity here. It's important for Malvern Hills as well. So that's something obviously Jen and I and others take oversight on regularly. But we're happy to keep feeding and reporting back because it is a really important issue moving forward.
May I just briefly have a supplementary, picking up exactly the point you've just made? Do we have any numbers on how many affordables have gone into rural areas versus the main urban bits of MHDC?
Yeah, not to hand, but I can certainly provide that with the minutes because we do monitor the split.
Yeah, thanks. Just picking up on performance indicator 15, I'm sure there's a correlation here between the number of people in B&B accommodation and the increase in the number of homelessness approaches, because that's often, you know, how we solve the situation by putting people into B&B. I'm just concerned about the number of children that we might have in B&B accommodation at the moment and whether we have that data. Obviously, if they're school-age children and they're moved somewhere that's not near their school, that can cause problems. So can we dig down that deep into the data? And also, is everybody accommodated within district or county, or do we have to move people out sometimes? Thanks.
Yeah. So we again, we haven't got that to hand, but we do, and in fact, we have a session with the portfolio holder next month where we'll be presenting data that breaks down how many families and how many children we have in temporary accommodation. What I would say from our kind of anecdotal knowledge is that the vast majority of people we have in temporary accommodation are single adults. That's the generally the vast majority, and our temporary accommodation officer works pretty hard, I think, to prioritise getting families out where they have to be in, so getting them out as quickly as possible. So we do work very hard on that. I think the other thing that we will also be breaking down, and we can share this more widely, is the out of county question as well. We rarely place out of county, but we regularly place out of Malvern Hills. So as you know, Councillor McVeigh, we have very limited access at the moment to TA Malvern Hills, although we have a priority in our council plan to increase that. The most common placements are in Worcester City or in Woodhaven, but we don't as often place out of county. But I think we can get that data, and I think Laura wanted to say something, and Jenny.
Yeah, just to add from a strategic perspective as well, we are currently starting to develop our new homelessness strategy. We are imminently waiting the government's national homelessness strategy, and MHCLG have indicated to us that children in temporary accommodation will be a priority within their strategy. So we're already starting to work on that basis, knowing that we will have strategic objectives around preventing children going into temporary accommodation, particularly be it bed and breakfast and emergency accommodation. But we do work with local housing providers to provide more suitable temporary accommodation, so self-contained houses as well. So we will always try and prevent emergency accommodation, but unfortunately we are faced with emergency situations, and we're limited in those situations.
Can I just come back and just make the additional point that I think there's some narrative on this on page 86 around the fact that, you know, we have committed in the News Council plan to end the use of B&B. And, you know, there is a piece of work, as Laura and Jen has said, going on around both looking at what our temporary accommodation offer is now and what it could be, and how we can tap in to utilise, you know, more self-contained accommodation, more suitable accommodation. You know, ideally, we don't want to place families. We want to obviously have, you know, a more streamlined process to help them move into settled accommodation. But where we need to use it, it is recognising exactly what Councillor McVeigh said around, you know, what can we offer in the district. And this piece of work will align very nicely with the work around our empty homes officer as well, and looking at unused properties across the district. Sadly, I was hoped that they were appointed, but we've offered again. We went out the first time, appointed, and then they withdrew. So we've offered again. I'm sure Councillor Bennett, who's I think behind me, will be pleased to hear. You know, but absolutely, where we've got, you know, units, whether it's empty homes or working with our RPs who might be able to release some of their stock for use, partnership work, we will be looking to provide much more accommodation. But I would expect, as part of the work going forward, it will come to you as members, as part of the PDPs, and back here to exec, and I'd very much welcome your input.
Yeah, my question was going to be about the number of empty homes and the fact we weren't making any progress. So you've already answered that. Thank you.
Okay, Jules.
Yeah, I'll do it now. I was going to do it earlier. So I've got a couple of comments really. Under 5.3 performance highlights, point 1. I'm really pleased with the performance in terms of determining applications, because I know this was a big issue for us as councillors over many years. And not only have we exceeded national targets, but we're also meeting our own internal stretch targets. And I think this is real credit to Ian MacLeod and to Kieran, and actually to Andy as well, because Andy's worked with the officers, the planning officers, haven't you, Andy? A bit more plaudit. And one of the crucial things here, and I've said it at previous meetings, is that we were a bit hoist by our own petard, really. We were being too nice in some ways. We were keeping applications live, even though they were pretty awful, if you know what I mean, not very well done. I don't want to say too much in public, but the fact that we've stopped those applications and started again has really increased our figures. We were just hanging on to all of these old applications that were sitting there going nowhere. So I'm really pleased that that's been looked at. And also in 4.1, and David will probably correct me if I'm wrong on this, it says that the hearings commenced in March and are due to conclude at the beginning of May on the SWDPR. I understand there is an extra day now in September, which means that actually everything is going to be put back a bit. And I think we're looking at early 2026 now, David, are we, for adoption? So this report is a little bit out of date, I'm afraid. It just needs updating. David, I don't know whether you want to say any more or whether Isabel... Oh, I also wanted to say that we've got Isabel with us, who has just recently become the new head of policy planning. And I'm really pleased because I have it on good report from Ian MacLeod that Isabel was fantastic during the SWDPR inquiry. So I'm really pleased for Isabel.
Okay. David, you want to come in on that?
Well, yeah. Lots of good things there, and obviously one bad thing that this has sort of been held back. It's only been held back because of the Mitten development and not getting access to it. So we have another day, which will be a Teams online with the inspectors to discuss this particular item. The inspectors are due to provide, I believe, Isabel will probably know more than me on this, but provide an interim report fairly soon. I was told the end of this month, but I would think probably next month would be a little bit better to give them a little bit more time. How are we doing so far, Isabel?
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you.
Great. I have another bit of probably good news. Not very often we hear good news. The question is, where do you give good news? So first of all, I'm pleased to let you know that we've been shortlisted by the Rural Town Planning Institute for the West Midlands Local Planning Authority of the Year Award. That will be held in Birmingham at the end of this month. It's brilliant to receive this recognition from our peers across the West Midlands, and we are all proud to be shortlisted, and certainly the staff are. It's a recognition of the improvement journey that we've been on and the progress we are making across the service. And as Jules has already said, thanks to the senior staff there. Carrying on, Fran Fleming, who's also been shortlisted for the Young Planner of the Year. Fran has been a great team player working on the local plan before moving to the household team, where she's played a key role in improving performance. So well done to Fran on making the shortlist. Still got some more, so don't worry too much. It's not usual we get this sort of stuff. In further good news, the corporate data team for Malvern Hills and Wychavon councils have been awarded platinum status at this year's exemplary awards. The platinum award is awarded to authorities that have maintained gold status across all criteria of the annual improvement for 10 out of 12 months up to the end of March with the various data. Unfortunately, this was not the case, because we actually obtained gold status for all 12 months out of 12. So these awards will be in recognition for the team's outstanding accomplishment in maintaining the highest standards of data quality throughout the year. So a big well done to Sarah and the team for achieving another year of excellent service. And obviously, my last thing was going to be to congratulate Isabel, but I've lost that.
Sorry, David.
So that's all right. That's no problem. She did a fantastic job at the South Worcester Development Plan review. She argued our points very, very well. So well done to all the people that were at that and argued the points for Malvern Hills and Wychavon councils, and also for Worcester City. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Just before I come to Natalie, thank you for giving us all that information about the awards. I think we need to actually bring this out into the public domain so that people are aware of how well our officers are doing, how well the district council is doing, and all the improvements that have taken place over this last year. I think that needs to get out. So I'll be looking to try and get some publicity on that, so the residents actually know that things have moved forward and aren't as bad as maybe some of them are. Actually, I think there tends to be a negativity about public bodies, and we're actually doing very well. So I want to get that message out through the whatever the appropriate media is, so we can do that. So thanks, David.
Can I bring up another point? One of your early statements was regarding waste, and you said that waste went to landfill. Wrong. Most of the waste that we provide in Malvern Hills into the black bins is actually taken to Hartlebury, where it's burnt, and so does not go into landfill. Now, on the I don't have a report on the Malvern Hills website, but at Wychavon, 92% of the residents thought that our residual waste, the black bins, went to landfill. And in fact, as is stated on their website, and they're with us as well, they don't send any to landfill.
Okay, thanks for that correction. Anybody else? Moving to Natalie.
Yeah, actually, John, you said what I wanted to, in that I think when I was reading the recommendations from the CPC review, it says that we don't share our good news widely, and I didn't know about any of those things, actually. So my point was going to be, we need to share it amongst ourselves with Vic's Roundup and things, but definitely to the public, because we're in the middle of a consultation on local government review. And, you know, who knows, it might have an impact on what they have to say as part of that consultation. So I think it's really important to get those good news stories out there.
Yeah, very, very well said as well. So I'm sure we're all in agreement with that. David, did you want to come in? No, you're okay. And any other, no comments? So we've got that's the annual performance review. That's for noting, so we can move on. So the next item is the Corporate Peer Challenge Action Plan. Is Andy going to cover that for us?
I'll take it. Everybody's read it. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah.
Of course, I've got some things to say. But having been involved in this process as a review of other councils, it's all pretty standard, to be honest, but there's a lot to be very proud of. And I can see that progress has already been made against the recommendations, but just to pick up on a couple, I'm really pleased that in recommendation 3, it says, you know, it's offering training, specialist training. We've taken them up on that offer of specialist training to help us improve the governance and decision-making process. So I think particularly we've looked at overview and scrutiny so far and planning next. So really pleased that you're taking advantage of the LGA's excellent training. Also, one of the recommendations was that the housing team was put forward for an MJ award. And when I said to Vic at the time, yes, you must do this, I'm sure he said, Oh, not sure because it's a lot of work and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I'm pleased to see that you've done it and that you have been shortlisted in an innovation, I think. Yeah, so just the best of luck. And again, I haven't seen that announced anywhere. So I think it's a story that we really ought to be sharing because housing and planning are perhaps two of the public service areas that come under the most criticism. And often I think it's unwarranted. And so we do need to be telling our story much better. But just finally, an observation really, when I was in discussions as part of the review and before and after the review, the duty of care for councillors came up in discussion, particularly in relation to events in November. And it was highlighted as a concern, and I believe it was triangulated because other people have told me they had similar conversations. But I can't see that referenced in the action plan under any of the recommendations. So I'm sure people here won't be able to answer this tonight, but I'm just wondering if it's the first column, is that our interpretation of the recommendations, or is that that's their actual verbatim what they said? Okay, thank you. I just wanted clarification on that.
Any other comments, questions? Jen?
Yeah, if it's okay, just to, in case members aren't aware, the team will be going to Westminster on Friday to find out whether or not they have won the Innovation in Housing Award. So we will make sure we let you know either way. But yeah, fingers crossed for them, please.
So who's going down? Who's all going down to that?
Laura is going down, our Lisa Williams, who is our senior housing advisor, Rob Hill, who's one of our outreach workers, and Charmaine Coombe, who is a housing officer. Lisa, Rob and I went last month to be interviewed by a panel of 4 chief execs and directors, and I was enormously proud of the team. They did Malvern Hills and Witch Haven really proud.
Well, we all wish for a great outcome on Friday, so we'll be waiting with bated breath to hear the results there. Proper peer challenge.
Okay, all those in favour, can you raise your card now? Thank you. That's unanimous.
Okay, proposed delegation of determination neighbourhood area applications.
Thank you. Everything's here in the report, most of it, not all of it. So I'll just start off with a short thing. The recommendation is on page 106 at 2.1. And I'll propose that myself to give delegated authority for the designation of a neighbourhood plan area. This will speed up the process as stated in the report. Now there is one if and buts that I don't know about, and that is on paragraph 4.1 about the financial implications. And I'm going to pass over to Isabel here, who's expecting me to pass this over. And then I'll come back asking for a seconder. This is because the government announced on the 16th, which is what, 2 days ago? No, yesterday morning, that they were withdrawing the neighbourhood plan funding. Isabel.
Is it working out? Okay, great, thank you. Sorry, my microphone wasn't working earlier. So following the spending review, the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government, or the MHCLG, have said that they will no longer proceed with commissioning new neighbourhood planning support services. So the way neighbourhood plans can access funding is through the service called Locality, and they provide grant funding to neighbourhood plans. So the designated neighbourhood area applies for funding from Locality, and they can get up to £10,000, or they used to get up to £10,000 in funding to help go towards printing costs, consultation costs, any evidence-based documents that they might need, There was an additional amount of funding that could be accessed as well for certain technical documents and things that would be needed in support of their neighbourhood plan. So MHCRG have now said that this is being withdrawn. So any requests for grant funding that were put in before the end of March this year will be honoured until the end of March next year, because it's an annual thing that goes forwards. But this means that at this moment in time, any neighbourhood planning groups that had not applied for this funding, we are not sure how they will get funding at this stage. I sent out a briefing note to members, and I've sent out a note to all town and parish councils within Malvern and Wychavon, because we're a joint service, just to let people know that this has happened. It was quite out of the blue, so we were not expecting this. So at this moment in time, we're not quite sure what will happen going forwards. We're not sure if there will be other types of funding that will come through. MHCLG also provide a grant fund for the local authority to allow us to do the Regulation 16 consultation, the examination of the neighbourhood plans, and then referendum if there is a need for a referendum on the neighbourhood plan. At this point in time, there is no information and no reason to believe that that funding has been pulled. There's no changes that have happened to any of the government websites. We haven't had any anything come out of MHCLG, and we haven't had any updates come through from the Planning Advisory Service, which are a part of the Local Government Association. So they normally give us updates if these things sort of change. So we expect that going forwards, we still will have access, Malvern Hills District Council will have access to that funding for any further neighbourhood plans that do come forwards. I have contacted the government department where we normally provide returns to get this money from, to ask them if it is going forwards, but I haven't heard anything back yet, but obviously I'll keep members updated if we do have anything. And the Worcestershire County Association of Local Councils, which parish and town councils can sign up to, have stated that they're currently preparing across West Midlands a campaign to try and get that grant funding reinstated. So it is a big change, and it's a watch this space, I'm afraid, but we will keep you updated when we know more.
Yep, I propose that. I'm just looking for a seconder, please. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favour, please raise your cards. Okay, that's unanimous.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
Chair, sorry, small point and belated with apologies. Before we move on to item 13, I should have declared before that I'm a resident of Suckley, and therefore potentially affected by it, even though I don't think what we're debating actually is contentious. But I think that should be stated for the record. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. So we're moving on to that. Item 13, David.
Thank you. Page 109. Recommendations 2.1 and 2.2 on page 106. Propose those myself to delegate authority that the neighbourhood area meets the requirement of the legislation and regulations are met. The statement by Suckley Parish Council and the neighbourhood plan area are attached to the particular document. So I'll be looking for a seconder in a moment. Again, we've got the same problem to do with the funding, but I don't think we need to go through that again. But that is obviously to do with paragraph 4.12 on this, whatever that is. Down a bit. Can't be 4.12, there isn't one.
4.2.
Sorry?
4.2.
4.2. Oh, close. 4.2. But, you know, obviously that's something that we've got to wait to find out. So I'd like to propose that, and I'm looking for a seconder, please. Unless you've got any questions that you want from Isabel.
Jules is seconding that. Yeah. Natalie?
Just to comment, thanks Isabel for the briefing paper, because I had heard a whisper, and so it was good to have that confirmed. But I just hope that Suckley have sneaked in time to get the support with it, really, because it is quite a devastating blow for parish councils not to be able to get the support to develop a neighbourhood plan. So yeah, fingers crossed for Suckley, I think.
Okay, all those in favour, can you raise your card now, please? That's clearly carried, Chair.
Item 14, weekly household food waste collection capital budget.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, Councillor Owenson had to leave early, so he did ask me on his departure to propose the report, which of course I was completely unprepared for. So although I'm fairly confident we have discussed this subject, and as set out in the recommendations, the proposal is to use £300,000 we've previously discussed to support the service, I am going to propose, hopefully attract a seconder, and then defer to Ian to pull out any of the key points.
May I second? Is that okay? We knew this was coming. As Jen said, we've discussed it at previous meetings, and unfortunately we did set aside some money to be able to meet the shortfall. And earlier in the meeting we heard how we're collecting less black bin waste and more green and brown bin waste, and so I think that's something that we need to continue to push. It might be a sign of behaviour change with our residents, and so obviously this is the next, really important step to take with food waste. So it's an easy recommendation for me to support, and happy to second.
Ian, do you want to come on this?
No, go straight to the vote.
Okay, all those in favour, please raise your cards. Yep, that's unanimous.
So we'll go straight to the vote on item 50 then, if that's the way we'll do it.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I'm happy to propose this item, which has probably been one of the longest discussed schemes in Malvern's history, with at least a 20-year history. But today, the recommendations are set out in item 2.1, 1, 2 and 3, and we are simply looking to approve the use of 40,000 UK Shared Prosperity funding to develop detailed design and costings for new crossings and public realm improvements on Church Street and Edith Walk, to undertake a consultation on both schemes with stakeholders and the public, actually. And we would like to earmark some Section 106 funding for town centre enhancements in Great Malvern, 50,000 plus small hundreds from the Audley Ellerslie development, and 49,000 plus a bit for the Treasurer's site. So there's also a recommendation to receive a further report following the consultation process. I did just want to say a few words about this. Members will no doubt have looked at through the paper, but para 3.9 outlines the proposals in summary. And I'd just like to go to that page for clarity here, for any discussion that might follow. But in Church Street, we're looking to reduce traffic speeds 20 miles an hour as proposed, and indeed has been agreed by Highways, or had been agreed. Widening of pavements, removal of on-street parking as required, providing a raised crossing and actually further up Church Street, a zebra crossing, and to look to work with the County Council on the development of the scheme should we, through after consultation, get to that stage. And Edith Walk, a scheme to improve the pedestrian crossing, which, as many will recall, was removed by Highways following health and safety concerns. It was a sort of informal, cobbled crossing from between Waitrose and Church Walk. So to reinstate that and to include some public realm features, improved sightlines, and improved access to the car parks and toilets. I just wanted to also to give a little bit of background to this proposal, because as I've mentioned, it's been talked about for some time, but in our sort of recent history, if I can put it like that, the town centre plans included a wide consultation. 1,500 people and stakeholders were consulted in our town centre plans, which highlighted traffic-dominated town centres, lack of priority for pedestrians. And that, you remember, that survey, that consultation was conducted by Paul Sampson and Jeff Hughes. And they also highlighted the connectivity challenges between the town centres. And this is really critical to increase the dwell time, and I think to make it more welcoming for both our residents and visitors to actually use the stores in our biggest town centre, I suppose, which welcomes 300,000 visitors in any one year. And following the town centre plans, this was actually incorporated into our council plan and was in the council plan in 2024, and then in the revised and updated council plan for 25. So it's been through several iterations. It also went to EconDev PDP, and that they looked at the scheme and preferred option 2 as proposed in these very outline schemes from Jacobs that are also accompany the papers today. Now, I do know there will be different views about that, and that's why there'll be a consultation, and the detailed designs will be put out to all of the stakeholders, residents, traders. But I know we have consulted traders in our traders meetings for Great Malvern over the past year plus, and recently, of course, I've gone out and talked to traders, and my feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, with traders talking about being thrilled by the scheme, a good solution, a brilliant idea, better for the town, wanting more wider pavements to help both pedestrian footfall outside of their stores, but also the hospitality offer. And also traders have sort of mentioned to me the fact that people love Great Malvern but don't come in and avoid it because of the traffic and the crowding on the limited pavement space at present. And some referenced Ludlow, where a narrow end of the street trade was much quieter, and the wider end of Ludlow street where pedestrians were much more at ease. And the other comment that's been made to me repeatedly by traders has been around the road rage that they hear daily outside their stores as big HGVs seek to try and get down the street. Deliveries are dropped off in illegal sort of parking spaces, causing a lack of visibility and a lot of problems. And of course, as this paper itself says, in 2023 we had the very tragic fatality on Church Street. So I hope you've had a chance to consider the paper. I hope that you'll feel able to vote with the recommendations. I propose those recommendations. Look for a seconder, and I'm happy to take any comments, as I'm sure Ian is as well.
David, do you want to second that? Is that what you said?
Yes, I'm quite willing to second this, but I do have a question and what have you. It worries me. I'm fully in favour of it because traffic and pedestrians don't mix. Wherever you go, they don't mix. But the problem is, do the traders realise that this is going to be closed for a long, long time while this work is put in? There's no time frame as to how long it's going to take, but judging by what happens in Worcester, they were well over 12 months in sort of block paving the high street. So I hate to think how long this is going to take and how much it's going to affect their trade. So please make sure that that's included somewhere in the consultation.
Yes, certainly, David, take the point that we don't want the street, which is our main high street, so to speak, to be closed for a long period. It doesn't, of course, involve lots of block paving. Option 2 was selected by PDP because it was the simpler of the two schemes. And I'm not saying that it's a religious, that it's actually sticking to those outline drawings particularly, but it was the simpler of the schemes. So But I take your point. Ian, do you want to add anything on that point?
I think these are just all points that will be taken into account within the consultation, and I'm sure there'll be a number of comments made from visitors and businesses and members alike, and they need to be built into whatever proposal you may wish to consider at the future meeting.
I think we have Peter first, then Natalie, then you were Peter hand up, Jenny? No, then Mark, so, and David.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very glad this is going for further development. Edith Walk, I really have no comments on. I don't see that there's a particular issue on that extremely narrow and relatively slow road at the moment. But the Church Street one appears to be a mass of confusion to me as it's constructed in option 2. When I look at the plans, we have a zebra crossing at the top, which is less than the minimum stipulated distance by the Department of Transport from a road junction. It would appear. Certainly if the drawings are to scale, then it must be. We have a desire stated in the report to discourage traffic flows, but then there's a proposed ban on left-hand turns out of Wells Road, which will increase them because they don't have anywhere else to go. It would also create a conflicting turn, which is already an issue, and a conflicting turn which would face immediately, if the plans are accurate, disabled bays. So you've then got some very interesting decision making to be doing by the people who are being forced to turn right. We appear to have a chicane of 2 sets of what I assume are disabled bays, one on each side of the road, whereas today they're on the same side of the road. I'm looking at page 144 out of 154 here, which is labelled Church Street option 2. If those are not to be there, then fine, but that's what's shown on the draft plans at the moment. And I think we have to also acknowledge that Church Street is a major thoroughfare. It is our high street for a reason. It's one of the very few thoroughfares that there are between the top end of Great Malvern and towards Barnard's Green. If you don't go through there, you're forced through narrow residential streets, or you've got to go down, for example, to slightly dodgy crossroads just south of the Nag's Head, sorry, north of the Nag's Head. Either way, if I come through from my ward to here, Church Street is the way through, and anything else is going to extend the journey and push me into residential areas where I suspect the residents would not prefer me to be. I'm not saying that we shouldn't go forward through this, but I do think that option 2, as it's shown on the plans, is, let's say, confused at the best. And I really do think we have to do better than that.
Well, I think it's the same comment, I'm afraid. I mean, these are all points that need to be taken into account.
I look forward to that.
I was a highway engineer, but it was 40 years ago, so I wouldn't want to have a go at answering the detailed question, I'm afraid, Peter. But the point's well made and needs to be considered.
I'd only like to say the zebra crossing at the top of Church Street, was that the one you're referring to, Peter? Yeah, that one is actually in the highways schedule of works. That's a county council plan, so that is not our proposal, but a highways proposal in solution to the fatality. It was their proposed solution, as I understood it, and I may be corrected by our current county councillor, but it was one of the options brought forward post the fatality. So.
Well, I accept what you say. I only point you to the Department of Transport's mandatory minimum for the thing. Highways move in mysterious ways.
Can we take... No, it's okay. We're still on this point. I just wondered, all these points that Peter's made, yeah. So there's a question of the design of this. That's essentially it.
I think I just repeat my point that the overall thing seems to be somewhat confused and disjointed. But hopefully, as has been said, we can get these things sorted out a little more thoughtfully.
can I just add, I mean, just in probably repeating what Ian's already said, you know, the whole point of the detailed design is to have, you know, a much more thorough look at these proposals and then consult on them. So I take on board the points.
Natalie, you were coming in.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one that was confused, Peter, because I did get my head in a bit of a muddle with the plans. And you actually only need to read the paper or look at Facebook or chat to people to know that there are very mixed views and feelings about the proposals. And I've got mixed views about them as well, really. I suppose the good things, 20 mile an hour is undeniably safer for pedestrians. If you are hit by a car travelling 30 miles an hour, you're more likely to be killed as a result, I'm sorry to say. So basically 3% of people hit by a vehicle travelling 20 miles an hour are killed, and compared with 20% at 30 miles an hour. So the stats are really there to prove that's safer. Crossings would be great, but I'm not sure if the placement of them is quite right, and I'm not sure if the placement is something we're consulting people on. I don't know what we're consulting people on, actually. I'm not sure what the detail is there. The removal of the parking, I don't think, is so great, because actually, having spent a lot of time in the town centre for various reasons recently, it actually serves to slow the traffic down, having it there, because people are forced to either stop at the top or the bottom. So I think we need to be really careful about the implications of removing the parking there. Obviously, traders are concerned about people being able to park and pop in and out. We've recently seen the removal of parking spaces at the back of Greenlink. And that's already causing them problems and the shops nearby, and also customers are unable to park nearby and pop into Greenwich. And I think actually there's currently a petition about the impact of that, which I have signed, I'll be honest with you, or maybe I should have declared an interest, I don't know. But I think the consultation, when's it happening? How long is it for? How and what are we consulting people on? I'm glad you mentioned the public, because it said stakeholders, and I wasn't really sure what was meant by that. I think my main question is, though, it appears to me, even with my rudimentary mathematical skills, there's a 700 grand shortfall to pay for the scheme. And it says in the report that the county council are not in a position to meet that shortfall. So where's that funding going to come from? Is this really a viable thing to be looking at in the first place? And also, you know, we know from local and national experience that infrastructure projects go massively over budget. You only have to keep Axe Bridge, Hampton Bridge, HS2, but, you know, just to name a few things. So the costs are likely to escalate. So if we're already struggling to meet the costs, what could that look like in the end, and how much is too much? You know, are we prepared to back down and say, no, actually, we can't afford this when we're partway through? Or if the consultation comes back and it's overwhelmingly a no, then will we stand by that and actually not proceed with stuff? So, you know, some quite fundamental issues for me, really, I think, with this. And I'm hoping that some of them will be addressed as we go through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they will, actually. And I mean, if the overwhelming answer is no, that's the point of the consultation. You know, I think end of discussion. I mean, this has been discussed for 20 plus years. I'm really surprised to hear you, you know, as a Green Party member, and, you know, be calling for parking to remain on Church Street, you know, because we're talking about regenerative tourism. We're talking about the impacts of COVID and what happened during that period. Prior to COVID, my experience was that traders were very pro retention of all parking, but after COVID, when they saw, you know, how people enjoyed the space and the streets and the opportunity to not worry about so much traffic impacts, then there was a real change in attitudes that I detected at our traders meetings. And in the interests of, you know, sort of sustainability, it's not as though there are no other options. And indeed, what I would certainly personally like to see is alternative parking arrangements. I'm well aware of the Greenlink situation, and thank you for declaring your interest there. But that's obviously a different matter related to B&M and the changes made there. But in terms of parking, what the traders are saying to me overwhelmingly is that they want people to have, they want to see Malvern as more of a honeypot experience. They want to increase dwell time, and they want they want our residents and our visitors to be able to increase their experience and enjoyment of our town, and that's really what I'm hearing.
If I may come back, please don't question my green credentials, Councillor Nielsen. I've already alluded to the fact that it slows the traffic down and makes it safer for pedestrians. I don't know if we're measuring air quality at the moment and whether that will be impacted by these plans. You must be speaking to different shop owners to the ones that I'm business owners to the ones that I'm speaking to then, and I'm in town regularly and I am speaking to them.
Yeah, well,
as you know, we've got a lot of new businesses in town. Have you spoken to them about the situation? Okay, well, I'd like to see evidence of the conversations then, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, obviously we're going into a consultation, and all formal evidence, will be produced following that. And as I've said, that will lead us to a conclusion on this situation. But the whole point of the widening of the pavement is to actually slow the traffic down, not to have cars slowing the traffic down, but have planters and a wider pavement, and to slow the traffic down through that. It's a sort of perfectly normal device used in many towns, both across the UK and even Europe. So, I don't think it's that unusual as a proposal, but we are consulting on it, and the consultation will be critical and key to the actions after that.
Okay, Mark, you come.
Yeah, I think, as many of us are in the room, we've all got slightly different opinions on this. My perspective is that, we know there are health and safety issues. These issues have been discussed for 25 years. I think there are elements of this that I would absolutely support. The 20 mile per hour makes absolutely, common sense to my perspective, without, could have a significant impact, could have a significant benefit for pedestrians. I actually, agree that actually potentially widening the pavements. I personally will have a different perspective to Natalie. I actually think it would improve the street environment if those car parking spaces were gone. I actually would like us to be more radical, but I'm conscious Worcestershire County Council have consulted over the years. I think options like a one-way system along the high street rather than a two-way system. I would personally like to see it pedestrianised, but I understand the implications. I would even be that radical myself. I would be even more radical around a one-way system. I do share Peter's and others' concern around things like a pedestrian crossing at the top of the high street, given how steep it is and where the junctions are. But hopefully that would come out of the kind of consultation. So even if we could get one win of a 20 mile per hour limit, that would be a win in my perspective.
Okay. And
Sorry, I just realised I didn't get an answer to the question about where the £700,000 is going to come from. It's quite important.
okay.
No, on the paper.
So I think we've got the money allocated through our own funding. We've got resources, but it'll cover that.
I think it really should have said that in the paper if that's the case.
I just clarify, no, any use of funding would have to go to full council to release the funding. We don't have any funding allocated.
David.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few comments about this. I mean, I think we've got to be a bit practical. The 20 mile an hour speed limit's very good, but if you take the parking away down there, in a lot of cases, unless you can really enforce the 20 mile an hour speed limit, you're going to find people automatically are going down there a lot faster. One of the side effects of having the parking is that it does restrict the speed of the vehicles going down that road. And my big concern is that you would actually, by taking the parking away, not only would it affect the traders, but also, more importantly, I think it would increase the speed of the cars actually going down the hill. and therefore you would make it more dangerous rather than less dangerous, unless you put some more speed devices in to reduce it. And I also agree that the proposed position for the crossing is in the wrong place. It probably ought to be at the end of Church Walk, halfway down, where it can be seen quite easily both ways, and again would have the effect probably of slowing the traffic going down the hill. So I think we've got to think about this very carefully, because I think there's a lot of negative things in there, and they need to be considered from a safety point of view based on what people actually do rather than what you're trying to do, which I can understand is right. But in reality, we see if you get a downhill slope like that, people will tend to allow the cars to run away if you're not careful, and you will increase the speed and then therefore increase the risk of accidents. I'm also interested to know why the Edith Walk crossing was originally taken away and why we now think it'll be allowed to come back again.
Yeah, the Edith Walk, if I deal with the last point first, the Edith Walk crossing was taken away because it was the judgment of Highways that it was not a formal crossing, it was simply a cobbled crossing indicating some priority to pedestrians, that it was actually a health and safety risk, and so they took out the cobbles, did not consult with the current member at the time, just literally went ahead and did this, and put in the tarmac, and it happened literally over a weekend, and the next thing was just tarmacked and no priority to pedestrians, but pedestrians think they have priority, so they now just step out into the tarmac space. So this scheme proposes a proper formal Belisha crossing, pedestrian crossing. So, and I think, as I understand it, yes, that has also been agreed by Highways as acceptable. That answers that one. Can I just also deal with some of your other points? I feel more confident than obviously colleagues have expressed on the 20 mph for Church Street, because the idea would be the pavements would be as wide, I don't think they're quite drawn this way, but as wide as, you know, the width of the parked cars to actually slow the traffic down. And personally, what I would like to see is a one way at a time prioritisation of downhill traffic, as you do see in other counties quite regularly, so that you've just got one way at each time, but in road signage indicating the priority to a certain way. So there's never both, you know, going at the same time. I think, again, that's just my thoughts on the matter. And also just to emphasise that I do see, or I would like to see, as part of the consultation, additional parking outside the post office and where the taxi rank is at present, because it's not hardly used at all. So it's not like there'd be a loss of parking.
Before we, yeah, we'll come to that. Just before we come, Jenny, sorry. Just on the comment about the speeding, the potential speeding coming down there. I think my experience of that is that the actual stretch is quite short. You've got a red light at the bottom of it, as it were, and you've got an entry which is not conducive to speeding. So I think there's a natural limitation just on the slope and the distance that's in there. So I wouldn't expect to see that as coming out as speeding. But that's, and any time I've used it, I think you're in second gear, reducing your speed if you're coming down, and you're not accelerating that much going up anyway.
I'm aware I'm cutting into Jenny, but I think your comments are correct, Chair, only if the car parking's there, because that's effectively creating the obstruction which limits traffic flow. Whether it should be that long or there is another matter for consultation.
Yeah, I think there's a distance thing here, Peter.
Agreed.
Yeah,
okay, I think we're in raging agreement.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to speak, but as you've all been having such a good debate and discussion, I mean, I've used Great Malvern, visited several times, but you all know that I live fairly south of the district, so I often go to, sorry to say, other areas more than I do Great Malvern. But I did spend some time out campaigning on the county council campaign, and actually this subject in and around this area did come upon the doorstep. But I think, like you've said, and with the traders, there there are very mixed views out there as to, you know, what is the best solution. So I hear what some of the comments are around, you know, is it or isn't it a problem? But I think the fact, if people really genuinely have been talking for 20 years about this issue, it kind of suggests that it's an issue. And you know, I think where the portfolio holders coming from and the discussions that I've had is, I know there's concerns with the scheme, and a consultation is what we need to tease out what people really think and have that, you know, not just anecdotal evidence, but that, you know, documented evidence of people's thoughts, but also people's ideas. And, you know, there's been great discussion around lots of the benefits and the pros and the cons, but, you know, there are other things to consider around active travel, around accessibility. And to Councillor Driscoll's comments, you know, are we being radical enough? Actually, are there things that we're missing that we're not talking about? How do we future-proof the high street? And I guess, you know, the main aim here is that as we, you know, enter our final phase as being Malvern Hills District Council, it's about legacy. And I think it would be particularly good, and I know the concern about finances, and that is, you know, obviously something we need to talk about. My understanding is, unless I'm wrong, we had the conversation with the County Council pre-change of administration. So I think it's worthy of another conversation, because actually if we can demonstrate through the consultation, which is what this executive report is asking us to proceed with before making any decisions on what it is and what it looks like, is that we should know once and for all, put forward a proposal and decide whether we fund or fund in partnership something that we might want to leave as a legacy for Great Malvern. So, you know, I just wanted to kind of come at it with a slightly different perspective, but I see there's lots of opportunity here, and it's something I will be supporting.
So all those in favour, please raise your cards now. Okay, all those against? All those abstaining?
You wanted to speak, sorry.
Okay, that vote is carried.
Thank you so much, Councillor Bennett. I really appreciate that. And I personally think your on-demand round the three centres bus route is absolutely critically needed. Thank you.
Item 16, the exclusion of the press and public. The committee is invited to consider making the following resolution: to exclude the public and press in respect of the next item in view of the likely disclosure of exempt information. We resolve that in accordance with provisions of section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of the following business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the Act. We're all comfortable with that?